Young-joon confesses to Miso that he wants to stir her heart, to move her, then leans down, intending to kiss her. But just before their lips touch, he is suddenly overwhelmed by a flashback, a woman reaching out with twisted, claw-like hands as a little boy screams and cries in terror. Young-joon jerks back instinctively and accidentally shoves Miso's chair away, sending her rolling across the room in stunned silence. Horrified, he tries to explain, but Miso isn't having it. She says coldly, "I just remembered what kind of person you really are. You're a narcissist who only knows how to love himself. Everyone else is just background noise to you." She assumes that he pushed her away because he was offended that someone as lowly as herself would want him. She says angrily that if someone asked about her first kiss, she'd have to choose between a boy who kissed her as a joke in kindergarten, or this humiliating moment. That hits Young-joon hard, making him feel even worse to hear that he just ruined what would have been her first real kiss. She says she's taking tomorrow off, since she can't stand to see his face. Young-joon tries one more time to say something, but Miso cuts him off with a piercing, unforgiving glare. She snarls at him not to follow her, and after she leaves, Young-joon finally takes a deep breath. He tries to tell himself that he's glad she doesn't know the truth, then groans that he's not even a little glad. Miso meets with her sisters for soju bombs and venting. She tells them the whole story but claims she read it on the internet, and asks why a guy would shove a woman away like that. Malhi says matter-of-factly that he must have a stress-related sexual disorder, and Pilnam agrees that he might have been traumatized by women or kissing. Miso cuts the evening short, not wanting to spend her precious day off recovering from a hangover. She walks home, and Pilnam grumbles that she thinks Miso was really talking about herself and Young-joon. Young-joon again tries to compose an apologetic text and ends up sounding arrogant and condescending. He erases it and sends Miso a short, "Secretary Kim, I'm sorry." He relaxes, realizing that apologizing becomes less terrifying the more you practice it. Miso gets his text, but decides to let him suffer. She answers, asking innocently if something happened for him to be sorry about. Young-joon freezes, then panics, wondering what to do if she doesn't even remember that they nearly kissed. In the morning, Young-joon feels confused when his housekeeper tells him that his secretary has arrived. He runs quickly to see Miso, losing a slipper along the way but not stopping, just pushing forward. But instead of Miso, it's Cheol, sent on her orders, with strict instructions to tie Young-joon's tie. He steps closer, but Young-joon steps back nervously, recalling like the tie is a snake ready to strike. Miso sits down to plan the perfect day off, but her idea of going to an amusement park only makes her think more about Young-joon. She gives hard-working Kao a stern lecture, warning him not to look at her today because he reminds her of someone too. She seats him in her desk chair, but she stumbles and accidentally pushes him across the room, creating yet another painful reminder of last night's almost kiss. Jiang is late to work, making the team suspect she's taking advantage of Miso's absence. She explains that her family moved, so her commute is longer now, but that she's looking to get her own place closer to work. Sarah snaps that nobody cares, telling her to just get back to work. Sarah has some place to go, and she nearly runs into Cheol, who looks amused to be so close to her. She yells at him to move and smacks his chest, and he pouts after her in a cute way. He has a crush on her. Miso spends the morning at the park eating ice cream, bored out of her mind, and she wonders what she'll do with herself when she quits her job. She texts Byung-hyun, her reporter blind date, to ask if he's found anything about that old kidnapping case. While she waits, she decides to try to find that oppa. Sagyeon shows up at the office, and the team all gasp when they realize that he's the famous Morpheus. Young-joon comes in and the atmosphere turns cold, and the brothers leave to discuss the book concert. Sarah and Young-ok sigh together over how handsome Sagyeon is, while the guys agree that they don't care much for his novels. They wonder about Young-joon's connection to the famous author, and team leader Jung is the first to guess their secret brothers. Sagyeon tells Young-joon that he likes the plans for the book concert, but Young-joon answers coldly that it's just one of many projects he's managing. Sagyeon says that mom and dad are happy they're working together and warns him not to burst their bubble about their sons getting along, but Young-joon says he should be the one reminding himself of that. Miso calls the office later to check on Jia, and tells her that she's spending her day off at home. Young-joon overhears, and he orders Jia to cancel his appointments because he has urgent business. As she wanders home, Miso blames Young-joon for having no one to hang out with, since he's taken up all her free time for so many years. She exclaims, "Seriously, vice chairman?" and hears a voice nearby ask, "Are you talking about me?" It's Young-joon, leaning on his car outside her apartment. He says he thought she might be thinking about him, and asks her to spend the day with him. Miso says she's busy, but he points out that she's just walking around the block and calling the office like she's hoping he would come see her. She sneers that he's great at everything, including getting the wrong idea. Growing serious, he asks her to give him a chance to make it up to her, then reads off a list of things he's planned, like the orchestra and a ride in a helicopter. Miso stops him, saying that she has no intention of doing any of that, firmly refusing to follow anything he says. Young-joon takes this in stride and says he'll obey her wishes today. She's skeptical, but he insists, and Miso warms up to the idea of having her perfectionist boss at her service for once. She decides to take a bus tour around the city, and Young-joon assumes that she picked such an ordinary trip just because it's the opposite of what he would do. Miso sighs that this must be hard for him, since he hates being driven by a stranger. He refuses to answer, and Miso clearly enjoys making him uncomfortable, but she's surprised when he actually gets on the bus. There aren't any empty seats, and Young-joon complains that the bus wasn't built with tall people like him in mind. Miso teaches him to hold onto the handle, and when a passenger gets up, Miso cheekily claims the seat. When the bus driver hits the brakes hard, it knocks Young-joon off balance and he plops right towards Miso. He stands again, embarrassed by the other passengers' jokes that he has weak legs, but Miso grins, finding his confusion funny. After work, Jia goes to look at an apartment, and the realtor tells her that a very frugal young man lives in the rooftop apartment. Jia goes up to look around, and she finds the mentioned young man mending the button on his only suit. It's Gwi Nam. He accuses her of stalking him, and angrily admits that he only owns one suit. She retorts that she's just house hunting, and after he recovers from the shock, Gwi Nam tells her that if she ruins his good image at work, he won't let it slide. Jia promises not to tell, but she's curious how he wasn't missing a button before, since she saw one fall off his suit. Gwi Nam shows her the jar of buttons he keeps for emergencies. After the bus trip, Miso leads Young-joon to her favorite pigskin restaurant for dinner. He balks at the tiny hole-in-the-wall joint, but he's determined to do things her way today, so he sits awkwardly while Miso grills the pigskin. She tells him that she used to come here all the time with her father and sisters because it was cheap. He asks about her father, and she notes that he's asking her a lot of questions, which is unusual for him. She says her dad is a guitarist in a band, and Young-joon remembers that she began working so young because her father got scammed while running an instrument store. Miso says that her father tried to work construction after that, but he was injured. Then he borrowed money from a loan shark to make a big investment, but it failed. She says those things happened because he forced himself into roles that didn't fit, but that he's doing what he wants now, and even her sisters have achieved their dreams. Young-joon asks if she feels resentful towards her family, but she says they didn't make her go to work on purpose. He says that people say it's noble to sacrifice yourself for others, but that it's really not, because you can lose yourself by sacrificing. He concludes that the most important thing is to be her own top priority. Miso chuckles that Young-joon's self-centered advice is actually comforting. He jokingly objects to being called that, then takes the tongs and says this is her holiday, so he's going to do the work today. After dinner, Miso spots a claw machine filled with stuffed animals, and Young-joon recalls her questionnaire answer, where she said she wants to get a stuffed doll from a guy she likes. She tries to win a doll several times while Young-joon gets frustrated, and he ends up shoving her out of the way so he can try. He confidently says that he figured out the trick while watching her, and fails anyway. He tries over and over, losing each time, until he decides to just buy the whole machine and Miso has to drag him away. At the end of the night, Young-joon asks Miso nervously if she'll be back at work tomorrow. She reassures him that she'll go back to fitting herself into his life, but he hangs his head like that's not what he wanted to hear. Neither of them seems eager to end the evening, and they stand for a long time just looking at each other with gentle smiles. In the morning, Miso releases hard-working Cow from his isolation and puts him back on her bed. She gets a call from Byung-hyun, who says that the only thing he found about a kidnapping was a case where the son of Yeomyung Group's chairman was abducted for 4 days back in 1994. He says that the company blocked reporters from covering the case, so the only information is that the victim was in 4th grade at the time. He tells Miso that the elder brother was in 4th grade that year, but she remembers Young-joon telling her that he was advanced to grades and was in 4th grade at the same time as his Hyung. As she walks to work, Yoshik stops to give her a ride. When they get to the office, Miso asks Yoshik if Young-joon has ever mentioned a kidnapping, but he says that Young-joon rarely talks about his childhood. He asks why, and she tells him that she doesn't remember it well, but she thinks she was once locked inside an empty house for a day. She says she remembers a boy with her, and admits that she forgot his name, but she thinks it was Young-joon. Yoshik asks why she believes that, and she thinks about Young-joon's terror of cable ties and the scars on his ankle. Yoshik tells her to just ask Young-joon, and she says she's considered it, but she hasn't said anything for fear he was scarred by it. She tells Yoshik that she really just wants to find her childhood friend, and asks him not to tell Young-joon they spoke about this. He tells her not to worry, saying there must be a reason he hasn't mentioned it in 9 years. Young-joon is already working when Miso gets to her desk, and she takes a moment to watch him, a dreamy smile on her face. He sees her and wonders why she's staring. He waves her in to ask for her help in thinning out his personal library, and she agrees to go to his place that evening. He's a bit confused as to why she's suddenly so agreeable, and she tells him, "You gave me the strength I needed, so I want to help you in any way I can." She starts to explain what she means, but then just says she's happy they met again. Confused, Young-joon just says indulgently, "Me too." After Miso leaves, he thinks that she must have been talking about seeing him today after spending yesterday with him, concluding that she's fallen for him, deeply. JWI Nam sees Jiang in the building lobby, and she says something to Sarah that makes them both laugh uproariously. It makes Nam suspicious that they're talking about him and his one suit, especially when he hears Jia say, "It's hard to believe, but there's only one." He angrily demands to speak with her privately and accuses her of telling his secret. She insists that she was telling the intern that their cafeteria is the only one whose chef used to work at a fancy hotel. He asks why she was laughing, and she says she just naturally has a smiley face, but he warns that he'll be watching her. After he storms off, Sarah asks Jia if she and Nam are in some relationship. Jia says that actually, Nam really infuriates her, and she's startled again when she sees him giving her a "sip your lip" glare. When Young-joon heads out at lunchtime, Miso comes close to fix his tie. She looks up at him and apologizes for not recognizing him sooner, but he just looks confused. On the way to his appointment, he wonders if she's acting strange today because he was so good to her last night. His car passes by another claw machine, and he thinks to himself that if he'd won her a toy, she'd have fallen for him even deeper. Liking the idea, he gets out to try it again, but he's just as bad at it today. A couple of kids tell him that he's terrible, assuming he's jobless because he's not at work, and he informs them that his company probably makes their toys and appliances at home. The kids ask him why he's playing a claw machine instead of just buying the stuffed animals, if he's so rich. Young-joon says that would be cheating, and that toys like these are only valuable when you work for them. He tries again, and this time he wins a little stuffed dog, and he and the kids scream in victory. He sneaks back to Miso's desk with the stuffed dog, and gives it to her as thanks for helping him enjoy his day off. He says the dog's name is Remember Me, another cute pun, and she takes the dog and bursts into tears. She apologizes to Young-joon sorrowfully for not remembering him, and he gets a little uncomfortable to see her crying over a stuffed dog. Miso volunteers to go downstairs to get coffee for the office, and at the coffee shop, she sees some caramel candies that spark a memory. She's locked in that house with Oppa, and he stops her crying by sharing his caramels with her. Miso buys a package of the caramels, thinking to give them to Young-joon as a gift. Jia tells her that she heard from a fellow Morpheus fan that the author wrote a blog post about being kidnapped as a child. Miso reads the post, which mentions details about the house that she herself remembers vividly. She recalls that after their ordeal, Oppa told her his name, Lee Young-joon. She decides to ask Young-joon about it, and he tells her very seriously that she remembers correctly, it was his brother who was kidnapped. Miso asks Young-joon about the scar on his ankle, saying that the scar made her think it was him. Young-joon just says stiffly that he got the scar as a kid, and he asks if she's been staring at him all day because she thought he was the boy she's been looking for. She apologizes, and he turns away. Miso runs into Seogyeon on her way back to her desk. He says he almost called her yesterday, and he apologizes for not telling her about being Young-joon's brother. He notices that she's upset and takes her for coffee, where she tells him about being kidnapped as a little girl. She's confused when he doesn't remember her, and he explains that the shock of being kidnapped messed with his memory. He tells her that he and Young-joon were always on bad terms, because Young-joon was boastful and the two were constantly being compared. He says that Young-joon was promoted into his class in 4th grade and won over his friends, and that they turned on him and bullied him. It's the complete opposite of what Young-joon told Miso, that he was the one who was bullied by Seogyeon. Seogyeon continues that one day, Young-joon took him to the redevelopment area. Young-joon left to buy drinks, but while he was gone, Seogyeon says he was kidnapped. While riding home, Young-joon sees Miso and Seogyeon talking in the coffee shop. He thinks about how Miso kept saying she was happy to see him and apologizing for not recognizing him. He continues home, and when she arrives to help organize his library, they're both back to being very formal with each other. Miso works on the project alone, and while she's culling books, she runs across a folder containing a number of resumes from 9 years ago, including her own. Her resume is pitifully thin compared to the others, all of whom had fancy college degrees and secretarial certifications. Miso grows confused, seeing that she was obviously the least qualified of the applicants. Suddenly Young-joon is there, and he asks if she wants to know why he hired her. She says yes, so he tells her, because you are Miso. Because you are Kim Miso.